being in Florida, living through some of these storms, really seeing it firsthand on, what kind of damages they can actually cause. Me actually being a part of it, and like it gets scary, right? Especially if you don't have impact glass or that protection. Like you want to. There's nothing more important than your family.
Absolutely.
Right? You want to keep your family safe, and then secondly, your home. For most of us, it's our biggest investment. So that's equally important. Impact windows and doors are extremely important to do just that, right? We want to make sure we keep our families safe and we want to protect our home as well.
Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast episode. You're listening to the Home Design Podcast. My name is Adam Kayce, your host, and we aim to educate, inspire, and connect South Florida with the industry authorities within their trade. We're getting close to hurricane season, so today we have a very special guest who's a recognized leader in the window industry with over 20 years of experience. We'll be discussing everything that you should know when going into the impact-rated product selection process to make your home hurricane ready, all with the president and CEO of Statewide Windows and Doors, John Dyda. What's up, man?
Hey, Adam, how are you?
All is good. Well, first of all, thank you for coming in, joining us on the Home Design Podcast. We've known each other for a while. I've known you pretty much since you opened your doors.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you. I really appreciate the time and you have me on your podcast. I'm excited. First of all, thank you. I've been doing your shows for 10 years now.
Yeah, absolutely.
By far the best show that we still do today. So, anybody that's not in it, they are missing out.
There you go, from your lips to everybody's ears. But I'm about to ask you the most difficult question of the day. I don't know if you're ready, but who is John Dyda?
Wow. So, John Dyda. So, obviously, President CEO of Statewide Windows and Doors. I'm born in West Palm Beach, Florida. Moved to Mississippi for a while, but returned back to Florida at the age of 15, roughly 16. From that age, I kind of dived right into this industry, right, as an installer.
Okay.
That's kind of brought me back to Florida, and I dove right into the window and door industry and been in ever since.
That's awesome. So, and also father, husband, personal life. I've seen your family grow. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, I can't leave that out. Married for 15 years, beautiful wife, 3 boys, 15, 12, amazing kids.
Are they getting into the business?
It's to be determined, right?
Right.
It's they've got some interest, but they like what they like, and I'll give them the exposure to it and let them see where they want to go.
We'll put them to work at the home show, but talking about right, talking about windows and doors. So you started, every single component. You're not just somebody that opened a window and door company, hired installers, and just started to build your company. You started installing, so everything that you've done in your career in the sense of the installation process, seeing all different types of products, seeing how easy or difficult certain things might be installed. So that's really, that's extremely special in the sense of who you are and how you've watched the industry grow and evolve. And you're from here, you've lived through hurricanes, you've gone through the storms, you see the importance. Sure. But talking about the importance of your home or people's homes being hurricane ready, why is it so important for a home to have hurricane resistant windows and doors?
Yeah, Adam, that's a great question. And look, as you said, being in Florida, living through some of these storms, really seeing it firsthand on, what kind of damages they can actually cause. Me actually being a part of it, and like it gets scary, right? Especially if you don't have impact glass or that protection. Like you want to, there's nothing more important than your family.
Absolutely.
Right? You want to keep your family safe, and then secondly, your home. For most of us, it's our biggest investment. So that's equally important. impact windows and doors are extremely important to do just that, right? We want to make sure we keep our families safe and we want to protect our home as well.
Absolutely. And when did like impact rated windows and doors really become a thing? Because if we see homes that were built in the 90s and early 2000s, at what point did it become standard where you had to install impact rated glass?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Hurricane Andrew, we all know that name all too well, right?
Yeah.
I think that was 1992.
I think everyone starts sweating when they hear that.
Yeah, and I was obviously still young at that time, but I still hear stories. And that's when it slowly started to change and impact started to become more relevant and more of a thing.
Right.
And then really getting into the 2000s. I mean, hey, look, today you can't even build a house, without putting an impact, window and door in there or some sort of accordion shutter that is approved. So it's a must. It's
right.
not really a want anymore.
Absolutely. And when you look at, how the evolution of the product and everything, it all starts in that process of being approved. You mentioned approved. What does it mean, or what is the undertaking that a manufacturer really has to go through to have their products approved, or what do those certifications look like?
Sure. So there's many different products out in the market, and there's certain ratings that you might hear out there. One could be WBD. What that means is windborne debris. That's a lower of the two certifications. You can still put that product in certain areas if you're not too close to the water, if you're not too far south. But the real name that you want to hear and certification is HVAC, right? That stands for High Velocity Hurricane Zone. And what that means is it means that window or door has been through a process down in the Miami-Dade laboratory, and it meets really rigorous test, right? And basically there's 6 different tests. One is going to be the large missile test,
okay.
And that's basically simulating a 2x4 going at an impact glass at 50 feet per second, right? I had the pleasure of seeing that test a few times. It's great to watch. It's no joke. And then moving on, we have the what's called the small missile test, right?
Okay.
And the small missile test basically is, kind of simulating smaller objects like rocks or maybe a golf ball or things like that, really going at a piece of glass a lot faster, right? So that's called the small missile test. And then we have, and this is actually my favorite one, it's called the pressure test.
Okay.
Right? And what that does is it really simulates wind going, so it's a negative and a positive. So that's going to really simulate the wind going toward the glass and then away from the glass. And it's actually 9,000 cycles, right? It's 4,500 of the positive inward and then 4,500 outward, which is a negative. And then finally moving on to the frame, right? Because if the frame is not strong enough to handle that glass, then really nothing matters.
Right.
And again, to really top it off and have that gold Miami-Dade HVAC label on there, once that test is completed, that window or door must still be operable and the glass must still be in the frame.
Okay. And that's important as you're going through this, because it's not even just hurricanes and storms and things like that. You mentioned golf balls. People have homes on golf courses down here. You don't want your homes shattering from golfers who may not be as good.
That would be me.
Yeah, right. So I can't say that I haven't broken a window or two.
Yeah, no doubt.
Of course. But no, I mean, talking about all of these different ratings and processes that these companies go through, because we see a lot of companies that want to be a part of the South Florida market. Being in the home show, we have companies that, they are starting to invest in the market, come into the market, and they don't realize they might be in the industry in other countries, in other states, and then they think that they can just come in and they don't even understand the process and how scrutinized product really is, because this Miami-Dade testing is truly to protect homeowners, businesses, these impact glass, windows, doors,
sure.
garages, everything,
sure.
It's in every single structure.
Yeah.
So, when going through all of those different components, you mentioned, you're talking about the importance of the frame, the glass, pressure test, small missile, large, I mean, everything, what it is going through, but the installation process. And I'm sure, you've been in the business for a long time. You've probably seen it firsthand, and you probably have cleaned up other people's work. What goes into the proper installation? Because at the end of the day, I mean, whether it's wind, whether it's objects, whatever it might be, none of that matters if it's not installed properly.
Yeah, Adam, you're exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up. You could have the strongest window on the planet, right? But if it's not installed properly and it's not in that house when you need it to be in that house,
right?
That's going to be an issue. So, look, it's critical that window or door is installed properly, right? And there's a lot that goes into it because let's face it, the codes back then for a non-impact window are just not what they are today.
Right.
Right. And we'll dive into that a little bit. Right. And it really comes from, removing that old window. It's not just sticking the window back in, throwing some screws in it, put some caulking on it, and walking away. There's a lot more involved into it, right? There's NOAs, product approvals that need to be followed in order to make sure that window is installed properly, right? You got to replace the wood, which is the wood framing in behind that window that is attached to the substrate of the home, whether that be concrete block or whether it be a wood frame home, right? Once that's done, then you need to do waterproofing. And that's a step that we find, you mentioned of cleaning up people's work and things like that. And if you don't know, you just don't know.
Right.
But waterproofing is huge. You want to make sure that you are, if it's concrete block, you want to make sure you're waterproofing that concrete block with the wood buck. Using the proper waterproofing, that's also key as well. You can't just use any product.
Okay.
Same thing with wood frame. You want to make sure that you're using a proper flashing, waterproofing pill and stick if it's wood frame. And then once you know that your opening is properly waterproofed and ready for the installation of that new window, new door, you want to make sure that you're meeting edge distance. And what that means is you want to make sure that when that frame or that window is installed in that opening, that screw, when it goes in, one, you want to make sure it's going through that new wood buck into the actual framing of the home, right? The foundation, if you will. And then you want to make sure that window or door is not too far in or too far out so that the screw is getting in actually into the meat of that wall and not too close to the inside or outside, because then you're going to sacrifice the strength of that installation. So that is very, very important.
Without a doubt, because you mentioned if for whatever reason a window was not installed properly, and say a window got blown out or whatever happened, or if you don't have impact windows and it shatters, what happens after as far as like with the wind and everything? Basically your home becomes a tunnel, and then there's problems with the roof. And so what does that look like? Like as far as why it's so important, it's not just having them installed, the proper installation and what could happen. Let's talk about that after effect.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, whether you have non-impact windows or if you have impact windows, and let's just say either scenario and the glass were to blow out, right? What's going to happen, to your point, is you're going to get that wind inside the home. And unfortunately, what's going to happen next is that roof is going to come off, right? And that's where the real damage happens. And, and that's what we don't obviously want to happen.
Exactly. Without a doubt. And when we're talking about all of this, there's so many different types of products, different types of systems, mechanisms, everything. What are you seeing as far as industry-wide being introduced? I mean, we see your display at the home show all the time. You're always, you're standing out, but you're bringing something that's impressive with height, with size, with functionality and everything. But what are some of these key features as far as mechanisms that, where the industry started as far as more simplistic regular doors, things like that, where today we're seeing more of the design element, the functionality, the cool factor being introduced.
You're getting me excited now.
Right.
I love talking about this. And I mean, going back to, about 20 years ago when I first started, right, there was just a single hung, right? That's just a window that opens up and down, slider side to side. It was very simple, but you had a protection. And to your point now, the industry is really evolving and there's some really cool products coming out. One being a pivot door, right?
Yep.
Very impressive entry door system with a massive pull bar. You might have saw it on some of our social posts.
Yeah, without a doubt.
We love doing those. They're impressive. I mean, they are not only are they protecting your home, but it's a statement, right? When somebody walks up to your home. So that's one of a many of cool features that have come out and hit the market. Another would be the bifold door. I'm not sure if you saw that at our show. At the show as well, absolutely. At the booth. But yeah, so a bifold door really allows you to open up the space and really bring that outside indoor and vice versa, collapsing to one side or half to one side, half to the other side.
And for everyone to visualize that more, I mean, you can, as simple as think of your closet door, the bifold, how it opens up and it slides over to one side. When people are designing homes, renovating homes today, everybody wants open space. And there are structural beams, there's all different things in the home. But when you look at a home with a bifold door and it is completely open, could be, I don't know, what's like the span that you're installing in some of these homes as far as how wide open it can be?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some 30-foot spans and, even 10 feet tall. So
right.
That, to your point of how the industry really evolved, we're really able to do a lot bigger openings now as well, which is appealing.
No, without a doubt. And everybody's putting so much money into their backyards. You want that easy transition. And I mean, I love that product. It's an awesome product. And, the functionality has always been there in the sense when windows and doors started to evolve. But now the design element, the functionality element, and the sense of how people live in their homes have become such a big factor. Are there any other cool products that you guys are installing that stand out?
Yeah, I mean, paint colors. We're getting new paint colors introduced,
right.
which is cool. Wood grain finishes and things like that on those doors. There's another really cool feature, and it's on some of the glass. It's actually called neat glass, right? And it's sort of if you think of that Rain-X that goes on your car windshield, and it kind of helps that water sort of kind of go off, so you can still see out of the window. There's certain manufacturers that have some products that they actually apply. And it really helps keep that rain off and sort of acts as the Rain-X. So that's a really cool feature as well.
And talking about that, because, we'll get into glass now, but, even second story homes, things like that, I'm sure people can relate to like the mildew or, staining that builds up on the bottom there. Does that help prevent it or help? It might not eliminate because it's inevitable, but but not having all the streaks and people being able to have clarity. I mean, that's a nice feature.
Yeah, what it really helps with is, and I always tell people, you don't want your sprinklers hitting your glass, right? Because we all notice we see those little water stains sometimes, and they're very difficult to get off. But what we found when certain clients select to go with that sort of extra feature, if you will, it really helps eliminate that and kind of bounce that water back off and act sort of as sort of a protective layer of that glass.
Right. And obviously we live in South Florida, so it rains almost every day at some point, whether it's a few minutes or all day, but that's a great feature. So talking about glass and finishes and things like that, what other, approaches do manufacturers have in the sense of having different offerings in type of glass?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different glass out there in, when we're talking about impact, you can go just to clear impact to get that protection.
Yep.
But, there are additional, tints like gray glass, bronze glass, and then low E is really popular these days, right? Yep. And what low E is basically it's a coating, and it really allows, the glass to deflect that sun so that you're not getting so many of those UV rays into the home, helping keeping the home cooler, keeping that, AC running a little bit less, electric bill savings there.
Right.
And even if you have couches or draperies, it really keeps that UV out so you're not getting any sort of discoloration or damage to those things.
Yeah, if you have artwork hanging on the walls, things like that. I mean, there's so many different elements. But, talking about that and exposures and things like that, when you're going into the process and suggesting product to people, are you guys thinking about which way the home faces in the sense of what, green? I know that certain glasses, at night, if you have the lights on inside, it's easy to see in, where there's others that's more reflective, but there's benefits during the day and others at night and things like that. But when you're going through that and understanding, how somebody might live in the house, are you looking at to offer the best solution and then kind of reverse engineer it to fit a budget?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, and that's exactly what we do, Adam. We train our guys very well to really understand the products, and when we go into a home to really, provide these solutions, the first thing we do is we really let the client tell us, what are the problems that you're seeing, or what are you really trying to accomplish here aside from just having that protection, which we know that's a given. And if the house is facing, let's say there's one area of the home that gets really, really hot in the evening, and maybe it's facing west where that sun's coming down. We see that often. That might be an area where we would want to suggest the low E glass, or maybe an insulated glass with the argon, something like that we know is going to really help keep that sun out and solve that problem. So we like to do a lot of fact finding we like to do a lot of listening, right? And we want to make sure that we can, be the ones that can provide those options so that we can solve the problems and ultimately make the clients happy.
Without a doubt, because anything with the home can be intimidating. Doesn't matter what part of the home. There's so many different options. There's so many different professionals. But understanding what can be installed is so important, because that's ultimately, like, everyone has a budget. Right. But there might be certain things that's like, you know what, we're going to get this element and we're going to get this feel, whether it's the aesthetic component and having something big and massive, where in other areas it might not make sense, where they can, you know, not sacrifice quality of the product, but maybe not overspend in certain add-ons or features or things like that. Because, you know, I mean, there's so many different things that go into the protection component of the home. When talking about, you know, because we see, you know, those different tints, and we were mentioning like how it will benefit reducing, you know, air conditioning, or, you know, just making it more insulated and things like that. Sound. What other benefits does it have? There's security features that, you know, let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's exactly right. So sound is another big one, right? I remember we had this client, and they're like, you know, I have this AC unit right outside that window, and I just hear it. One, it won't shut off.
Or a pool filter or whatever.
Or that. And it won't shut off. And it's loud. Like when I sleep at night, I hear it. Right. So, you know, I knew we could solve two of those problems, right? One, we could make it shut off because we're giving you energy efficient windows, right, and less air is escaping, which in return allows that, you know, the thermostat to catch up and the unit to shut off.
Absolutely.
But also we solved the problem of not hearing that AC going all night while they were sleeping. So that's a really big one. Security is another big one. Look, even if you live in a safe neighborhood, you know, you're still going to have theft at times, and in having that impact glass is going to really help prevent that as well. We talked about hurricane protection as being the number one most important reason, obviously.
Right.
But you know, if you travel, you don't want to have to worry about closing up shutters or putting up shutters, right, or even during hurricane season. Not to mention, it's going to increase the equity in your home, you know, tremendously. And
also the value of lowering your insurance premium.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that, and we all know that's a big thing right now in Florida, especially with the, you know, the recent storms and things like that. We are seeing a lot of, you know, clients either getting completely dropped or their premiums are just going through the roof. So
without a doubt, and when looking at all of the, because you guys install in commercial, you install in residential, all different types of properties. Is there a difference in the type of product that's being installed, whether we're talking about a single family home or a commercial building?
Yeah, there are definitely commercial products. You know, if let's say we're in a commercial building, you know, you might want to meet codes like ADA, which means you need to, you know, be able to meet the code for wheelchair accessible, things like that. Depending on,
I guess that gets into like thresholds and everything as far as the type of product.
Exactly. So you want to make sure that you have that lower threshold. There are parameters that we would definitely need to follow.
Okay.
And then depending on what floor you're on, right? If you're in a high-rise building, if you're on a corner unit, you might be a zone 5. So, you know, really picking a contractor that understands the codes and given on where you're at is crucial, because you want to make sure that you're putting a product that's strong enough with that design pressure that's not going to fail in the event of a storm.
Without a doubt, because I mean, you're talking about like selecting the right installer or company that's going to give you the right information, because if they don't have experience with it, they're not thinking about it. And if you have to go backwards because something failed just because the wrong product was installed and you were taking advice from the wrong person, you know, that's a huge component to make sure that you're working with that right professional.
Absolutely.
You know, so going through you know, different projects and different types of installations, different homes. Is there something that people are asking for more today than maybe in the past? And a lot of that might come to like the mechanisms or things like that. And when you were talking about like corner unit, just what popped into my head, if somebody has a corner, there's even sliding glass doors that meet at a corner to be able to have a completely open.
That's a new feature that I missed that one earlier.
So
you're right.
you want to talk about that a little bit and bring that up, because that is a cool feature, because when you think about it, like you assume corners have to have some type of structural element to support that corner, but
sure. Yeah. Well, actually, you know, they do, and that most likely won't be the best fit for a retrofit project, right? Meaning if they already have windows, that home is probably not built to be able to have that product installed. However, there are ways where we can engineer around it and do some reinforcement. We do see that on more of our higher end luxury homes, that's really happening a lot. So that is a cool feature.
It's an awesome feature. And are there any other features that that you've seen or features that you've heard manufacturers talking about that might be coming to market?
There's a lot of talk about eventually having a glass that can sort of change tint colors depending on the sun and things like that. I think it's still very early on, but that's something we're definitely keeping our eyes on. I think would be very appealing to the market, and it's something that definitely gets me excited. So
even something like that, because I mean, we talk about, or we hear about a lot of technology innovations, smart home innovations, things like that.
Sure.
When you say that, I would assume that is a very reasonable type of element that will be added, because even if you see people who wear glasses and they have glasses where it looks like sunglasses, when they go inside, it changes in elements like that. So being able to change tints, that would be a really great feature, because you would get the best of every world when it came to, what the home's going to look like, because there's the aesthetic of what color do you want your tint to the functionality of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is in the works. They did come out with something called the smart glass technology. Right, you may have
we're seeing that. Yeah, we're seeing that more and more.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really cool.
Are manufacturers building, because we've only seen it kind of like as an add-on to a window? Are manufacturers implementing it into the actual construction and manufacturing of it?
Yeah. So one of our manufacturers, one of our partners, is actually working on it design right now, and we'll be visiting that plant, I would say, in the next month. So hopefully I'll have a better answer if that's happening sooner than later. But it's very exciting. We can't wait to explore it.
And that just it just shows like how technology and innovation is really changing the way we live in our homes, and how doing these types of, whether it's a part of the initial process of building a home, or if you're remodeling or whatever it might be. But something I want to touch on is the element of how it will increase the value of a home as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you alluded to this earlier, people are putting more money in their homes today than they ever were.
Right.
And I think that probably has a lot to do. It seems like after COVID,
right?
I hate to say that word, but
but I mean, people realize they're looking at they weren't spending as much time outside of their homes.
Right.
So they're like, we're here. Why can't we just enjoy every element and live essentially their best life in their home, where they, raising their family, spending every day, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're definitely seeing that. People certainly caring a lot more about what they're putting in their home and what they're doing. And it's good for the home space.
Without a doubt. And talking about like going off of these different innovations, something that I do want to touch on, because I feel like it's kind of like interior doors in somebody's home. They're not really thinking about it, but they should. Garage doors. Garage doors have come a long way. That is as much of a feature as anything else. It's not just a blank garage door with that, painted wood grain. We're talking about glass elements, even the functionality as far as how a garage door goes up. Let's touch on that a bit as far as what you're seeing from the manufacturers and what they're implementing to meet what homeowners are really wanting today.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, obviously, and you know this, Adam, in order to get those full deductions on the insurance premium, you have to have that door, upgraded to hurricane impact, right? So, with that being said, I think the manufacturer are taking that a lot more serious, and they want to make sure that they can provide a solution for that. And, the new glass door that's out now hasn't been out too long, but that is, we've seen really gaining a lot of traction. A lot of homeowners really, really love that door. And from my understanding, there are some more doors in the works now that we really see that traction really being more, being looked at.
Without a doubt. And even the mechanism, like, there's the traditional garage door open.
It's a lot more quiet these days as well.
Much quieter. But also, as far as, have you seen any of the garage doors that are lifting straight up and like coming back, as far as like, I guess it's what's the mechanism that it would be, but there are more heavy duty doors that you're seeing. Are you seeing different types of functions as far as how they open? In talking about garage doors, I feel like garage doors are being implemented in other parts of people's homes, or something that might look like it in my eyes, but there's probably a name for it.
Yeah.
Where if somebody wants to open a space and have it open.
We see that a lot in restaurants, right? And I think that's a really cool concept.
Is it an actual garage door that they're using in those applications?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it serves two purposes, right? It looks really cool.
Yeah.
It's bringing that outdoor to the inside, and they're getting the hurricane protection.
Without a doubt. That's awesome. So talking about all of the manufacturers and things like that, metal, aluminum is a big part of the construction process. Are there other materials that people should be thinking about as far as whether it's the framing or anything that, they should have information on?
I mean,
there's vinyl out there, there's aluminum, there's wood,
Yeah, I mean, there's vinyl, there's aluminum, there's wood, and there's metal, right? What we're seeing, the most two relevant materials are aluminum, right, and they're vinyl.
Okay.
Right? And they both have their kind of pros and cons depending on where the home is, how big the window or door is, because they all have different limitations or actual design pressures that they meet. So there's a lot to be considered depending on where that project is.
Is there a true benefit of let's say vinyl versus aluminum? If somebody comes to you guys and say, you know what, I really want vinyl, and maybe they just haven't been educated on the aluminum component, is there anything that your team and yourself would offer as far as information, as far as this is what you really need to be thinking about when making that selection process?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. So yeah, vinyl traditionally is known to be a more energy efficient window, right? Because the frame won't allow that heat to transfer from the outside to the inside. However, through innovation, as we were talking about earlier, some aluminum products do offer what's called a thermally broken frame, right? And what that means is in the center of that frame, there's actually a thermally broken sill that will do the same thing that vinyl does, right? It will not allow that heat to transfer, or cold to transfer from the outside to the interior of the home. So there's so much cool things happening in the space right now, Adam, that really gets us excited. And they're both great products. It just really comes down to educating the client on the advantages, disadvantages, and really ultimately let them be in their judge from there.
And that's the biggest thing, because education is key. And that's why we have you here today. You've been in this business, you've seen it all. When a customer calls you guys and you guys go on a visit, sit down, measure, talk to the client, is it mostly they have a general budget, say, this is what I'm thinking, or do you guys start with just a general quote as far as your suggestion? Like, what's that starting point? Like, if they give you a budget, it's easy to reverse engineer it. But what does your approach look like?
Yeah, I mean, our approach again is getting in the home, really finding out what they already know about windows and doors. Maybe they have a couple quotes prior to us, so we don't obviously want to waste their time if they've already heard options. But we do want to understand really. What's kind of going on in the home. Is the primary reason for upgrading the windows simply just for hurricane protection?
Right.
Also, do you plan on living here for the rest of your life? You're going to sell the house in 6 months. And when we understand these things, then we can really make sure that we are suggesting the right products to, fall within their budgets. And then, hey, listen, if they don't know anything about it yet, and we're kind of the first ones in,
right,
then at that point, after our fact finding, we understand what's important, then we can kind of lay out the different options to solve their problems and see what works best for them.
Without a doubt. Is there anything that you guys find as something that's often, as far as it could be a misconception or misunderstanding in the industry, whether it's just bad information from somebody else or something that you guys feel like you're educating people on more?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And oftentimes we find that homeowners think that impact windows and doors are just way too expensive. Right. They can't afford them. And we're able to really, and that's really it's not true for the most part for most people, right? Because when you look at the value that they're bringing when you install them in your home, from a lot of things we talked about, right? Energy reduction, your electric bill going down, homeowner insurance really going down, and things like that. Especially if you're going to finance a project. If you look at that overall payment,
right,
as opposed to really your ROI on what you're saving, not to mention you're protecting your family and your home. We find that a lot of people come to realize that it's really not that expensive.
Right. Without a doubt. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into expense, because it's long-term, it's short-term, because the home value is 100% going up no matter what you do. Right. The feeling you get when you're in a home and you redo all your windows and doors, there's no better feeling. You have more light, more functionality, more design elements, right, different color, things like that. But then the savings, like you mentioned, on, whether it's, your AC or different elements that you're able to, as far as contain the air within your home in, right, a more effective way. But when going through all of it, the biggest thing is finding the right professional. And, it's smart for people to get 2-3 quotes. You don't want to get too many, because then you're just, overwhelmed.
Sure.
But what are those questions that homeowners should know when talking to different companies out there, because, we, in construction, in every business, there's those companies out there where, they're looking to just sell a job, and that's all they're worried about. They're not thinking about that. This is for a family. It's for people who are living there, whatever it might be, the human element of it, where you guys are taking on a big responsibility to protect their home, their investment, everything that's within it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think, from the beginning, you want to make sure the company is licensed in that trade, right? So you want to make sure that they have the proper license, the proper insurance, right? The proper workers' comp on the guys. God forbid somebody gets hurt, you don't want that contractor going after the homeowner, right? That would be a nightmare.
And talk about that, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand the importance of workers' comp, because if something happens, it's the homeowner's responsibility if all of a sudden they find out that they don't have the right insurances.
That's exactly right. If they don't have that proper insurance, they're going to come after the homeowner.
Right.
And that is not a position that somebody wants to be in. So it's very important to make sure they have that proper coverage and the proper workers' comp to protect themselves. Aside from that, you want to find out how long that company's been in business, what kind of experience do they really have. And I always tell, clients, you really want to probably go with a company that's been around for maybe a minimum of 5 years. Right. You want to check into their reviews, right? Go online, make sure they're A-rated with the BBB, right? That's important.
Absolutely.
Check out the Google reviews. And here's another thing is you find a lot of companies, we're seeing this all too often, where you have companies that will come out and they tell them they've been in business for 30 years. You go on Google and they don't have a review that's older than 4 months.
Right.
That tells you something, right? So, we just want to educate consumers and help to make better decisions to make sure they are, choosing that right contractor. Another big thing is, once you get past choosing the right product and making sure it is an HVAC and not a WBD, again, that's high velocity hurricane zone, not just windborne debris. Once you pick the right product, you want to make sure that this is a company that really understands installation and they're not subcontracting out their work, Adam, because what we see is, and I only know this because that's how I got into the business years ago, is some of the bigger companies would hire me as a sub and they say, hey, John, go out, install these windows, we'll pay you per piece, bring us a check back, make the customer happy. That's not what you want, right? Because you're kind of rolling the dice and you're just hoping that you get a good crew, and they're trying to rush through these homes and really get as many windows and doors,
because they're looking at volume.
They're looking at volume.
That's it.
They are buying the cheapest screws that exist, the cheapest caulking that exists, right? They're not really caring about your home because they're trying to speed through it. You want to make sure that you're not using subs. That way the company can control the materials that are being used, right? The screws, the sealants, the shims, making sure that they're putting that concrete bed of mud underneath sliding glass doors so they roll properly and you don't spend thousands of dollars on a new door that is not rolling smooth.
Right. And that is a big component for why it rolls smooth.
Absolutely.
And we'll continue on, but you brought up caulking, brought up screws. What screws should be installed and what type of caulking? So that way a homeowner even knows what is the right.
Yeah, so every product has a product approval, and that highlights and tells you exactly what you need to be using, right? But you want to be using 1/4-inch top cons. That's the diameter, right? And you want to be using, depending on if it's a window or a door, you want to make sure you're getting at least 1.5 inch embedment into the substrate of the home. That doesn't mean using 1 1/4 screw. That means once that screw goes through that frame, through that wood buck, and then into the concrete, it has to be embedded a minimum of 1.5 inches,
Gotcha.
right? We've come out to homes to where they're putting windows and doors in with drywall screws.
Yeah, that's scary.
It scared me, and it's like so again.
But a homeowner would never know.
They don't know until a window blows out.
Right.
So,
and then talking about caulking, what type of caulking is there? Some limitation or something that they should be aware of?
So we use a product called OSI Quad. That's for the exterior. It's a polyurethane based exterior caulking. It's one of the most expensive caulking on the market. But it doesn't shrink. It doesn't discolor over time. There's a 30-year warranty. You cannot use the same inside caulking for the outside caulking. And that's something else that we see, and that's the issue when you're dealing with subs or a company that subs out. They're buying that $3 caulking and they're using that for inside, outside in 6 months, a year. They wonder why they have a water leak.
Right.
And it's you got to pay attention to these details.
No, that's a great point. Are there other areas that people should be asking about in this process?
Yeah, I would flat out ask the salesman, walk me through the process, right? What does that look like?
Right.
And if that doesn't look like, and Adam, we're big on training, right? And it's
you
not
have a
just
whole
about,
training room. I mean, we'll talk about it briefly, but I mean, you have this incredible state-of-the-art facility that you guys are education first, not just talking about the customers, for your team. I've never seen, you literally have, I don't even know how big it's a huge room. I mean, you have a huge staff where you guys, every single week, you're putting your team through training.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And I say this about everything. Training is not just about you train the guys up, you let them go and they're done, and you say, figure it out.
Right.
It's constant training because there's accountability that comes into that as well. And I think a big thing that we do differently, right? One, we don't subcontract, so we can control the pace at which they're installing, right? We can make sure they're not speeding through a home, trying to install as many windows as possible. We give them the screws, we give them the caulking, so we know they're using only the best. And that's how we can really control quality installation. But back to your point, yes, we have a 43,000 square feet new facility where we have not only a big training room, but we also are actually building a real house in the warehouse right now, and that's going to allow us to do that continuous training to make sure we're doing all the things we just mentioned daily, right? But I want to back up a little bit to some other things the homeowner should really be paying attention to and asking a sales rep before committing to an agreement with them or moving forward, right? You want to make sure that they can really outline what that process looks like. And that goes from when installer pulls up to knocking on that door to how they, greet the client, explain the process, protect the home, making sure they're not tearing out, 5 or 10 windows at a time. It's one window at a time. You want to make sure that you protect the floor, the furniture. You want to minimize that dust because let's be honest, this is a very involved, invasive project. It's construction. You're dealing with concrete and wood and saws. So you want to make sure that you can minimize this as much as possible so the client can have the best experience possible.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they're living in their home through this process. If it's a remodel. And containment is a big thing. And, there's inconveniences anytime you remodel anything.
Sure.
But you don't want somebody to rip out 5 windows, 10, whatever. And then all of a sudden, it's dark, it's late, crew's gone,
the rain's coming,
so knowing those things, but a homeowner wouldn't think about that. So it's important to bring awareness to, the process is a big part of how the project's going to go. And, talking about caring from every single component, you talked about training and building this house that's in your facility and always meeting with your team and always making sure that they're up to date on the latest. And because there's always new innovations, there's new codes, there's new things that people need to know about. It builds camaraderie within your team because people are, they're with each other every day.
It's about the people.
Right. 100%. And then, so when a new product comes out, it's not just like, hey, we got this cool new door that you guys have to go install, go figure it out. Like you probably have manufacturers coming in, showing your team, bringing it. Like there's a process to make sure that the first time you install something isn't on someone's home. Like they're going through this process before.
Exactly right. and that's why we're building this home, because we do have some new products hitting the market like we talked about. And we want to make sure we're doing mock-ups.
Right.
And we're training all of our guys to really understand the proper way to install it to make sure we can do that in people's homes.
Right. So somebody decides they're going to go with a company. There's obviously a contract involved. Most people get intimidated by that and they're like, I don't know what I'm signing or looking for or whatever, but I'm just going to sign it because I know that you guys are going to go do this. Is there anything that somebody should look out for in a contract to make sure it's there or make sure it's not there that you've seen over your years where people have been taken advantage of or anything like this? Because a contract is meant to protect both sides.
Correct.
A good contract. It's not meant to take advantage of anybody on either side. It's just good business, and you're going to do your part. We're going to do our part, and it's going to be great at the end. But have you seen anything that's been put into contracts or things that have been left out? It could be a part of a project that somebody just doesn't realize, where it could be as easy as finishing everything on the inside to make it look finished, but the homeowner is not even thinking about that because they assume it.
Yeah. great question. And aside from license number on the contract,
right,
physical location on where that company's actually at, you want to make sure they actually have a physical location and not maybe operating out of their house or whatever the case may be.
Right.
You definitely want to look at the fine print, and you want to see what they're including or what they're not including, right? And oftentimes, and we've seen this movie before, where you might have a company that maybe they're $500 or $1,500 cheaper than on a product.
Right.
But when you look through that fine print, what you're not seeing is whether that wood bucking is included. If there's drywall damage, who's going to be repairing that?
Right.
Stucco damage, who's going to be repairing that? And then we've even seen sometimes in the fine print, it's asking for the client to protect their own home. So read the fine print, and really make sure we understand what's included, what's not included, so there's no surprises on the back end.
Right, and that's the biggest thing, and that can bring a lot of frustrations. And in a lot of this, it all comes down to awareness, and it all comes down to understanding, because there's a reason why you guys have grown. Like literally, like you guys had a small storefront location the first time we met, and today you have this 43,000 square foot facility that is unlike anything I've seen. When going through everything and all of the things that you've learned throughout your years, because people don't learn from just doing everything perfect.
Right.
There's mistakes, but the most important part of every business is how you recover from it, because that is part of construction. You don't know what's behind someone's walls. You don't know once you remove that window, as far as if it's been leaking for 10 years and whatever it is. What does that look like? Like, what do those conversations look like when you discover that has nothing to do with you, but bringing the possibility of awareness?
Yeah, I think it's transparency,
right?
Right, and that all starts at the initial consultation, and really being upfront and letting a client know, hey, here's what's included, here's what could go wrong.
Right.
Right, and oftentimes there's really not a lot that can go wrong, unless it's a wood frame home built in 1880.
Right.
Then maybe there's a different conversation. But if there is something that happens, and to your point, maybe there was a leaky window that you really couldn't tell from the outside until you removed that window, and then you started to maybe see some mold or some additional things that there was just no way to tell.
Right.
At that point, that's a conversation, and it's really getting the client involved, getting them engaged so they understand the extent of the issue and what that looks like as a path forward.
Right.
Right. There's a solution for everything, but it's a conversation that has to be had.
Absolutely. Because as you mentioned, trust, transparency, and just being busy. People do business with people. So it's being comfortable with the individual that they're working with, the company that they're working with, and how it's backed and how they present themselves. Because someone that cares about their brand, cares about their image, chances are they're going to make sure it goes smoothly.
That's exactly right.
So we spoke about a lot today. You want to touch on this new facility, go a little bit further and say, as far as like what you guys are implementing into, your strategy, your showroom, your team, all of those different elements?
Yeah, it's exciting times right now. And the first thing I would want to start out with is it's my people. I have some incredible people, Adam. I mean, we've been, and you've known me from the beginning since I first started in that little small storefront space 10 years ago.
Right.
So, we're a decade in business now. We have grown rapidly. We have incredible people that walk through our facility, and they are genuinely happy to be part of the statewide company, and they wouldn't want to work anywhere else. And for those reasons, those incredible people, we were able to acquire this 43,000 square foot facility and really be able to have more space for our team, attract even more talent, right? The best talent, and be organized, right? And what this big facility means, more organization. This means more efficiencies, and it's going to really allow us to service our clients better.
Right,
and
100%. Because you talk about team, that is the lifeblood of every business. You're only as good as the people that are next to you. You're taking it a step further. You're even putting a gym in your facility where you can health and wellness and everything for your team. I mean, it goes a lot. It goes, when you're hiring a company, you're hiring the culture.
That's right.
And, I can say from somebody that has been a part of it in a way, in the sense of watching you grow, being a part of our shows, and the importance that you've placed on that, it's inspiring.
Thank you.
So, we spoke about a lot. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you want to touch on?
we covered a lot. It's we're in exciting times right now. We want to protect as many homes and families as we can, and just looking to get better every day.
And your specialty as far as where you guys service. So you're obviously, St. Lucie, all the way Palm Beach County, Broward County, Miami-Dade. You're going on the West Coast. I mean,
yeah.
Let's talk about that as far as areas you service.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we cover right now on the East Coast of Florida, from basically the Melbourne area all the way down throughout Miami, even into the Upper Keys. When we talk about the West Coast of Florida, Cape Coral up to Tampa, we'll be launching a Jacksonville office in about 6 months. So yeah, we cover a really big, broad area, and we do big jobs, we do small jobs. We just want to help people put the best quality products in their homes at the most fairest price possible.
Without a doubt. I mean, you work with, it doesn't matter who it is, what type of house, homeowner, home builders, all different types of people. So you must have known when you started this company that you were truly going to be statewide.
I did. And it's, what you think is what you do is what you become. And we've been manifesting a while, making some great decisions, taking care of our people, doing right by our clients, and things are happening. We're very excited.
Well, I couldn't be more proud of you and your team and everything that you guys have accomplished. It's amazing having you as a part of the shows. You guys are a true partner. You've been with us for a long time. Seeing how, your company, but how your displays have evolved, and, everything that you put into it, we appreciate that.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you guys done for us as well. And we're excited to continue the partnership, and we can't wait for the next show. Absolutely.
And if somebody wants to reach out to you guys, contact you, what's the best way?
Yep. Give us a call at 1-833-GO-IMPACT, or visit our website at www.statewideimpactwindows.com.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming in today and talking everything Windows. I hope everybody that's listening has incredible insight, all the how-tos, the questions to ask, product knowledge, what's available, what's out there, what's coming. This has been an awesome episode, and I appreciate you for all of you that have been listening and who tune into our episodes. We are Florida's premier destination for everything home design and home improvement. Visit the home design and remodeling shows in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach. Always go to our website at homeshows.com. You can follow us at FL Home Shows, but make sure you subscribe to our channel to get all of the latest in home design and home improvement. But until next time, stay tuned for the next episode.